All right, so let's dive into a story that might just rewrite what you thought you knew about history.
Okay.
We're talking about Napoleon Bonaparte,
All right.
but not, the emperor, the conqueror, the legend.
Right.
We're going way back,
Huh.
before the cocktats and the battlefields,
Yeah.
to uncover the kind of the surprising beginnings
Yeah.
of this iconic figure.
Yeah, it's fascinating to kind of peel back those layers, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because while Napoleon might be like the quintessential Frenchman, in our minds,
right.
his story actually begins on this small, rugged island called Corsica.
Corsica. Okay, so right off the bat, we're busting myths. He wasn't even French by birth.
Exactly.
That's going to surprise a lot of people.
Exactly. And that's where our deep dive begins.
Okay.
We've got historical accounts, personal letters, even some of his writings from, his teenage years, all painting a really vivid picture of how growing up on this island, just as it was being annexed by France, shaped the man he would become.
That's got to be a powerful force.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine witnessing your homeland being taken over, that struggle for independence. It's almost like you can trace the roots of his ambition back to those early experiences.
Yeah. What's fascinating is that Napoleon grew up in this environment where he was exposed to violence, poverty,
Right.
and this very strong sense of Corsican identity.
Yeah.
He even spoke a local dialect, not French or Italian,
Really?
and apparently always had a thick accent, even after years in France.
Wow. So he's starting life as an outsider in a way. That must have had a profound impact on him, feeling like he had something to prove.
Absolutely, and it's reflected in the sources we're looking at.
Okay.
Even as a young man, Napoleon was full of contradictions. He
Right.
devoured books, particularly, those about Roman and Greek history.
Right.
He saw himself as a modern-day Caesar, destined for greatness.
Wow, that's a pretty bold vision for a teenager.
Right.
But you said contradictions.
Yes.
So there's more to it.
Much more. He was also drawn to the ideals of the Enlightenment, liberty, republicanism, the rights of man.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he admired strong, decisive leadership.
Uh-huh.
You can see this tension between his desire for freedom and his yearning for order play out in his early writings.
It's like he's trying to reconcile these two opposing forces within himself.
Yeah.
On one hand, the romantic idealist.
Yeah.
On the other, the pragmatist who understands that power often comes at a price.
And that's a theme that runs throughout his entire life,
Yeah.
this constant struggle between idealism and ambition.
Yeah.
But here's another contradiction for you.
Okay.
This future emperor,
Right.
this master strategist,
Yeah.
was described by his peers as arrogant, self-centered, even awkward.
Wait, hold on. Are we talking about the same Napoleon?
Yeah.
The charismatic leader who inspired armies and conquered nations?
It's a reminder that even the most towering figures in history started out as ordinary human beings,
Yeah.
grappling with their own, insecurities and shortcomings.
So how does this awkward Corsican teenager with his head full of grand ideas and ancient heroes
Right.
actually set out on the path to power?
Well, it's partly thanks to his father, who pushed him towards a military career,
Cool.
seeing it as the best way for Napoleon to advance socially.
Yeah.
He ends up attending military schools in France, where he's forced to learn French and adapt to a new culture.
Imagine being plucked from your island home and thrust into this completely foreign environment.
Yeah.
That must have been quite a culture shock for him.
It certainly contributed to his sense of being an outsider,
Yeah.
but it also exposed him to new ideas and ways of thinking.
Right.
And here's where things get interesting. He excels in math, which leads him to specialize in artillery.
Artillery?
Yes.
That seems like a pretty significant detail.
It's absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Napoleon's mastery of artillery becomes a key factor in his later military successes.
Oh, wow.
He understood the devastating power of cannons and how to, use them strategically to his advantage.
Talk about a pivotal moment.
Right.
It makes you wonder how different history might have been if he'd been a terrible math student.
Right.
But while he's mastering cannons and tactics,
Yeah.
something else happens that changes everything.
Yeah.
The French Revolution erupts.
Yes.
What was Napoleon's reaction to this chaos?
He was deeply conflicted. On
Okay.
one hand, he supported the revolution's ideals of liberty and equality,
Yeah.
believing they could lead to greater autonomy for Corsica.
Right.
Remember, he's still very much invested in his homeland's fate.
So he's walking this tightrope between his Corsican identity and his budding French ambitions.
Yeah.
Did he ever fully commit to one side or the other?
Well, that's the heart of the struggle for the young Napoleon. We see him returning to Corsica during leaves from the military, getting deeply involved in local politics and the nationalist movements there. There are passionate letters from this time and even a fictional story he wrote where a Corsican character takes bloody revenge on the French.
Wait a minute. He's writing violent fantasies about fighting the very people he's serving.
Yeah.
That's some serious internal conflict.
It really highlights the turmoil of that era and how Napoleon was torn between two worlds. He longed for integration with France, but also dreamed of Corsican independence. It seemed impossible to reconcile those desires.
Yeah, it's almost like he's living a double life, and all of this is happening while the French Revolution is descending into chaos. He was actually there in Paris, witnessing the storming of the Tuileries Palace and the king being forced to wear the revolutionary cap. What kind of impact did those events have on him?
Those were defining moments for Napoleon. He saw the king's humiliation as a sign of weakness and incompetence. But it wasn't just about the monarchy. He was also horrified by the violence and bloodshed of the revolution, particularly the massacre of the Swiss Guard. Those experiences solidified his deep-seated need for order and control.
So even amidst the revolutionary fervor, he's already showing signs of the leader he'll become. It's like he's drawn to the energy of the revolution, but also repulsed by its excesses.
Exactly. And as the situation in Corsica becomes increasingly unstable with accusations of treason swirling around him, Napoleon is forced to make a choice.
Right.
He realizes his position on the island is becoming too dangerous.
So he heads back to France, the country he's both drawn to and conflicted about. What happens next?
This is where the stage is set for his meteoric rise. France is in turmoil, at war with its neighbors, and desperately in need of strong leadership. Napoleon, with his military training and ambition, sees this as his opportunity.
It's almost like history is conspiring to create the perfect conditions for him to seize power.
Yeah.
But it wasn't an easy climb to the top, was it?
Not at all. His early military career is a mix of setbacks and triumphs.
Right.
He actually experiences defeat in Corsica,
Huh?
which shows just how complex those divided loyalties were.
But then there's the Siege of Toulon, a major turning point in his career.
Toulon, wasn't that where his strategic genius first became apparent?
Yeah.
I remember reading about a bold plan involving cannons, but I can't recall the details.
It was a brilliant move that showcased Napoleon's tactical thinking. He was still a relatively junior officer, but he proposed using artillery to bombard the harbor, which ultimately led to the city being recaptured from British and Royalist forces.
So that victory really put him on the map.
Yeah.
But success can be fleeting, especially during a revolution. Were there any setbacks along the way?
He faced plenty of challenges. During the Thermidorian reaction, a period of counter-revolutionary backlash, Napoleon was actually imprisoned for a time.
Wow.
It's a testament to his resilience and political savvy that he not only survived but emerged even stronger.
He seems to have a knack for landing on his feet. But amidst all this political maneuvering and military campaigns, there's also the matter of his personal life. This is where Josephine enters the picture.
Ah, yes, Josephine. His relationship with Josephine de Beauharnais is a fascinating chapter in Napoleon's story. She was a widow, older than him, and well-connected in Parisian society. Quite a contrast to this serious, ambitious young man we've been discussing.
It does seem like an unlikely pairing. What drew them together? Was it love, ambition, or a bit of both?
It was probably a combination of factors. Josephine was charming, graceful, and had those crucial connections that Napoleon lacked.
Right.
For her, his growing fame and ambition may have been appealing, especially after the trauma of losing her first husband to the guillotine during the Reign of Terror. So it was a relationship that served both their needs, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, we know it ultimately ended in heartbreak.
Yeah.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're still in the phase of Napoleon's rise to power.
Mm-hmm.
How does he go from celebrated officer to Well, the Napoleon.
The Italian campaign is the key.
Okay.
In 1796, he's appointed commander of the Army of Italy and tasked with facing off against the Austrians. This is where his military genius truly shines.
Yeah.
He leads the French to a series of stunning victories, outmaneuvering his opponents, securing vital resources, and solidifying his reputation as a brilliant strategist and inspiring leader.
It's like watching that awkward teenager we talked about earlier transform into a battlefield mastermind.
Right.
It's a real-life hero's journey.
The Italian campaign is significant not just for Napoleon's personal rise, but for the course of European history.
Right.
His victories force Austria to negotiate peace, making him a national hero in France and fueling his political ambitions. He's no longer an outsider. He's a force to be reckoned with, holding the destiny of nations in his hands.
It's incredible to think how his Corsican roots, his intellectual curiosity, and his military talents all converge to create this larger-than-life figure. It's almost like a perfect storm of ambition, talent, and circumstance.
That's a great way to put it. But we can't forget the human element, the complexities of his personality, and the influence of his personal life, including the ups and downs of his relationship with Josephine.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Napoleon wasn't just a military strategist or a political mastermind. He was a man driven by passions, ambition, and contradictions.
Yeah.
And those are the very things that make his story so compelling, so enduring.
And that leads us perfectly into the next chapter of our deep dive, the rise of Emperor Napoleon. We'll see how this man, who started as an outsider from a small island, goes on to reshape the entire continent of Europe.
Last we left off, Napoleon was standing triumphant after his Italian campaign, a bona fide hero in France. But the country was still, pretty fragile. The revolution's aftershocks still rumbling. How does a military leader, even one as popular as Napoleon, transition from battlefield glory to actually taking the reins of government?
It's a fascinating blend of political maneuvering and tapping into, the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
Remember, France was craving stability after years of upheaval. People were tired of chaos.
Yeah.
Napoleon presented himself as the solution, someone strong, decisive, and with a proven track record of victory.
So it's not just ambition driving him, but also this sense that he's what France needs at that moment?
Exactly. He understands the public mood, but he's also a shrewd political operator behind the scenes. He cultivates relationships with key figures, all while, his popularity with the army and the general public continues to soar.
Right.
And then comes the pivotal moment.
Okay.
Coup d'etat. He overthrows the directory, the government that was in place,
Right.
and establishes himself as first consul.
A coup. So much for the ideals of the revolution, then. It sounds more like grabbing power than earning it.
It was certainly a bold move,
Yeah.
but one that resonated with a nation yearning for order.
Okay.
And while Napoleon consolidated his authority, he didn't just focus on power. He implemented a series of reforms that modernized France in profound ways. We're talking about the legal system, administration, even education.
Wow.
These changes had a lasting impact, shaping French society for generations to come.
It's almost like he's rebuilding France in his image.
Yeah.
This blend of authoritarianism with a genuine desire for progress and efficiency. Is that a fair assessment?
I think so. But let's not forget, his ambitions weren't limited to just France.
Yeah.
Napoleon had his sights set on a much grander stage, all of Europe.
Right.
And that's where the Napoleonic Wars come in, a period that reshaped the continent's political map.
Now we're talking about the Napoleon we all know from history books, the conqueror, the emperor. But what drove these wars? Was it pure ambition or something more complex?
It's a multifaceted question. Certainly personal ambition played a role, but there were also ideological factors at play. Napoleon saw himself as spreading the ideals of the French Revolution across Europe.
Interesting.
And of course, there was the constant threat from his enemies, particularly Great Britain.
So it's this tangled web of motivations that launches him into these massive conflicts spanning years and involving countless battles. This is where the military genius we've talked about truly comes to the forefront, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Those famous battles like Austerlitz, Jena, Wagram, they're legendary.
Napoleon's tactical brilliance was on full display during this period. His ability to read the battlefield, outmaneuver his opponents, and inspire his troops was remarkable. And he introduced innovations in warfare, the use of mobile artillery, combined arms tactics that revolutionized the way battles were fought.
But even for someone like Napoleon, there had to be limits, right? We all know the story ends with his downfall.
Right.
And wasn't there something about a disastrous campaign in Russia?
The invasion of Russia in 1812 marks a turning point. Napoleon's grand army, hundreds of thousands strong, marched into this vast country,
Yeah.
only to be met with, scorched earth tactics, a harsh winter, and ultimately a devastating defeat. It's a blow from which he never fully recovers.
So is it hubris that brings him down in the end? Did,
Right.
did he overreach, believing his own legend?
There's certainly an element of that. His exile to Elba, the brief return to power during the Hundred Days' War, and the final defeat at Waterloo. It's a dramatic fall from grace.
What a story. From an outsider in Corsica to Emperor of France, reshaping Europe along the way, only to end up a prisoner on a remote island. It's hard to imagine a life with such highs and lows.
It really is a story that captures the imagination.
Yeah.
Napoleon's legacy is complex and multifaceted. He was a military genius, a ruthless dictator, a reformer, a tragic figure.
Mm.
His impact on law, governance, and warfare is still felt today.
So what can we take away from this deep dive into Napoleon's life? What does it all mean for us, the non-emperors, just trying to navigate our own lives?
I think it reminds us that history is made by real people with all their flaws and ambitions. Napoleon wasn't just a name in a textbook. He was a complex individual shaped by his experiences. It also encourages us to look beyond simple labels of hero or villain, to see the nuances, the contradictions, the forces that drive individuals and shape events.
It's a great reminder that history isn't just dates and battles. It's about the human story behind those events. Yeah, and in Napoleon's case, it's a story that continues to fascinate and intrigue us centuries later.
Absolutely, and that perhaps is Napoleon's most enduring legacy. The questions he leaves us with, the ways in which his story continues to resonate with each generation.
Well, there you have it, our deep dive into the life of Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yes.
We've covered a lot of ground, from his Corsican roots to his rise to power, his military campaigns, his loves and losses, and ultimately his downfall.
It's quite a story.
We hope you found it insightful and engaging.
As always, we encourage you to keep exploring, dive into the history books, read those letters and writings, and draw your own conclusions about this extraordinary figure, because that's what history is all about, an ongoing conversation that connects us to the past and helps us understand the present.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep those minds curious, and remember, history is happening all around us, and each of us has a role to play in shaping its course.